Support for the Couples Council comes from Mercier Wellness and Consulting. Their purpose is to equip you with the right skills for a happy and healthy relationship. Services available in office or virtual. Schedule your consultation now. For more information, visit mercierwellness.com. Mercier Wellness and Consulting. Small steps, big changes.
This podcast is not a substitute for therapy. Please consult a licensed professional for your mental health needs.
Now on with the show.
Hello and welcome to the Couples Council. I am your host, Dr. Jameson Mercier, the Love Mender. And today, you get to have me all to yourself. Yes, isn't that exciting? We are going to have a nice little chat today about fights. Ding, ding, ding. Yes. Knocked down, dirty, nasty, named. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. No. Actually, on today's episode, we're going to talk about the complete opposite. There are sometimes we fight and it looks like that, where the cops have to come out and, one of you is sitting on the curb in a wife beater. No, I'm just kidding. Hopefully that is not you. Hopefully I did not see you on an episode of Cops. But the fact of the matter is that is a situation that happens fairly often. But we're not talking about that today. We'll save that for another episode. What we're talking about today are these silent fights, these polite fights, right? By the way, here I am thinking that I was coming up with this new term with the whole polite fights thing. Apparently that's something that's been around for generations, right? Within the Asian culture, there is such a thing as a polite fight. Apparently, you fight to see who can be the nicest. Yeah, it's called a polite fight. So that's why I'm not calling this episode Polite Fight. But we are talking about that, though, within the context of a relationship. We're talking about the fights that don't make any noise. We're talking about the silent fights where if you didn't know better, you would just think that everything was cool and people are just quiet. In many cases, right? Hear me. In many cases, those fights are the worst. They are like the most damaging to relationships. These silent fights or situations where we avoid fights and avoid disagreements. I once had a couple come see me and I forget why, but somehow we got to talking about how they handle disagreements. What are their fights like? And, they said, we don't fight. I want to say as a counselor, right, in my professional opinion, but you do not have to be a professional. You do not have to be a counselor to know that that's a load of crap. I said, well, what do you mean you don't fight? And they're like, no, we don't do that. We get along great. I said, and I said, okay. I said, all right. And that's when I have to put down my pen and pad. I said, help me understand how it is that we've been together, 10, 20, 25 years. And don't fight. Well, we just don't. We get along great. I said, okay. Wow. At that moment, I saw that we would have to go back and unpack a lot of things. And ultimately, we did some great work. We made some great progress with them. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that went and what we did. But you can't think that you're going to be married and not have any fights, guys, or have a healthy marriage, a healthy relationship, a meaningful relationship, and not have any fights. Now, again, I'm not talking about the fights where someone ends up bloodied and someone goes to jail. No, I'm talking about like just your everyday fights. Like, I wanted vanilla. Why'd you bring chocolate? Or Neapolitan, which I can't stand, by the way. Those kinds of fights. Or the kinds of fights where we say, hey, hun, we're going to be spending Christmas with my parents. And you're like, well, wait a minute. We spent Christmas with them last year and the year before that. Why does it seem like we're always doing Christmas with your folks? Those kind of fights. You can't tell me you do not have those fights. And for some people, the word fight scares them, right? As if there's something like dangerous about saying that. But a fight is essentially a disagreement. And we have them all the time. Where do you want to go eat? Well, I think I want to go have some burgers. Oh, burgers. No, I don't want no burgers. Let's go get some like Thai food. Thai food. That is a disagreement. Hello. Let's unpack this. Why is it that we get in relationships and then we do our best like to avoid disagreements? Huh? Well, there are several reasons, right? Everyone has got their own reasons why they avoid disagreements. I've heard reasons that range from, well, when I got married, in my mind, I said I would just never fight with my spouse. Okay. Great. I mean, a decent premarital counselor would have helped you with that in like 10 seconds. Okay. You're going to fight with your spouse, right? Other people say, well, that's the advice that I got. I shouldn't argue with my husband. Okay, sure. But sometimes it's going to happen. Your husband's not going to be right all the time. You're not going to agree with your husband all the time. Okay? Even parenting it's just a natural battleground in a lot of ways. Some people they don't like fights. They don't like disagreements. And I'm a big proponent of we don't just anything, right? Like nothing just happened, or I just don't, or I just did, right? There are often many reasons, sometimes deep reasons, sometimes very real reasons why we do things. It's just a matter of unpacking it and getting to the core of why. But it's important that we do, right? It is important for the sake of your relationship, whether that's your marriage, whether you're dating, whether you're friends even, right? For the sake of your relationship, it is important that you address the conflicts and not try to pacify these conflicts and act like they're not happening and find yourselves in one of these silent fights or polite fights, so to say. The biggest reason, I think, right, and there's a bunch of things connected to this, is that when we don't engage around the disagreements, right, when we pretend like everything's okay or decide that, you know what, we're just not going to talk about it, there is this natural drifting apart that happens. And if you've been in a relationship, you know what I'm talking about. First of all, life itself naturally just tries to pull people apart. You got your jobs, which unless you work together, and even when you do, it doesn't always work out. You got your jobs that keep you apart from each other much of the day. When you come home, if you have kids, they keep you apart much of the day. And when you're sleeping, it doesn't count, right? It does not count. And so if you are not intentional about being connected, right? Even, hear me now, even when it's not pleasant, you will find that there is this natural pull, this drifting apart that happens. Even in the best of times, if you are not seeking to stay connected and engaged, you will just find that you're drifting apart. You will. It's going to happen. And so when a disagreement happens, right? I don't know, say you want a new car and your spouse disagrees. In cases like that, you say, you know what? I want it. Here he is telling me I can't, or here she is telling me I can't. Who she thinks she is, who he think he is, blah, 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 blah. He probably was having an argument last week, yesterday, whenever. You know how it goes. If you shut down about that, at least with each other, if you do not continue to have that conversation or sort through this, like, where do we disagree? Where did we separate, right? Why are we not in alignment? If you don't get to the core of that, you will find that, okay, so we can't talk about getting a new car or parenting the kids, whatever it is that you were fighting about. If you just shut it down, leaving it unresolved, and you say, you know what, I'm done, I don't want to talk about it anymore, which we do, right? Which we do. Oh, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't want to talk about this anymore today, right? Anymore right now. Okay, but at some point, we must talk about it, right? But for those of you who do not, you are just creating more and more of a separation, because this is one thing that y'all don't talk about. And what is that, right? What is that? And I know people do it, but still, what is that to say, yeah, no, we just don't talk about that? Hello, how are you in a relationship with someone and you have things that you just don't talk about? Now, you can't talk about everything under the sun, but that's a different conversation from knowing that there's something you don't talk about. It's one thing if it's something that you just never get to, but to say, hun, this is in the box with stuff we don't talk about, that is a problem. That is a problem, because that is going to bleed into other things, okay? And not just small things, because if you were fighting about it before, you're going to fight about it again. Money, sex, parenting, right? We want to move, or we want to like buy a new house or switch careers, start a business. All of those things, which are big decisions, right? Which tie into the core of who we are and how we want to live. It ain't going to be good, right? It is not going to be good. So now you're not connecting, you're not bonded around that, and you stop communicating. You stop communicating, and you might say, well, no, Jameson, no, it's not that we don't stop communicating. We still talk. Yeah, no, you're right. You may still talk. You may talk a lot. Okay? You may talk every damn day, but you are not communicating. Right? And if you pay attention, right, if you explore, go back, if you can, to before when this thing was happening. What did communication look and sound like? And now, what does it look and sound like now? Compare the two. If we're communicating now, then what were we doing before? And if before we were communicating, how can now, where we're drifting apart, how can that also be communicating? It can't be both. The reality is we're merely just reporting. Yeah. We're merely just going down the list. How's work? Good. Kids? Good. What's for dinner? Chicken. Oh, chicken again. Yeah. You know how it goes. You know how it goes because we've all been there. The difference is some of us are there and we're like, whoa, this ain't working. I can't do this. We got to figure this out. So we're not communicating. We're just simply reporting. And that's reporting very, very superficially, right? Just keeping the lights on and keeping the the kids fed. That's all we're doing. We're not communicating at the level where we're being drawn to one another. We're not communicating at a level where we are having, where we're connected about like our fears, some of our desires. We're not communicating about those things, and those are the things that matter. You hear me? Those are the things that matter. So why does it happen? Why does it get to here? Aside from some of the reasons we talked about earlier, there are some people who did not have any example of how to do this, right? So what do I mean? Some people never saw their parents argue. So they're like, well, my parents never argued. Well, I shouldn't argue, right? And yeah, there's this thing about not arguing in front of the kids. However, there is another side which is just as beneficial, if not more beneficial, in my opinion. It isn't that you don't want the kids to see you fighting or arguing or disagreeing. You don't want them to see that and it's bad, right? And it's unresolved. However, for your kid to see that mom and dad had a disagreement, yes, we yelled, but we didn't disrespect each other. We didn't put our hands on each other. And now, guess what? We're fine. Why? Because this is what grown-ups do. What is wrong with your kid seeing that? What is wrong with your kid saying, so you mean to tell me just because mommy and daddy argues, they'll be fine? I don't have to worry? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a good thing for your kids to see. So think about that. The other thing is some people don't argue because they're afraid that it will lead to a divorce. Well, newsflash, people. You don't have to fight or argue to get a divorce. Hello. Lots of people never fight, never argue. You would bet your life that they were happily in love and still they get a divorce. Yeah. In many cases, if you ask me, it's probably because they didn't argue and didn't fight. First of all, you don't have to be afraid of arguing because arguments in and of themselves are not bad things, right? Disagreements are just a part of being in relationships. They're part of being human. It's okay, right? The only thing we say is as long as we're fair about how we disagree and how we fight, right? The other thing is if you're going to avoid certain conversations, certain disagreements because you're trying to avoid getting a divorce, whoa, we've got some bigger fish to fry here, right? You can't decide how you're going to operate out of fear, right? A marriage rooted in fear, whether that's of divorce or a fear of disappointment or a fear of whatever, that is a problem. Okay? That's a couple, that's a family that needs to be in counseling because he or she now is not functioning or operating out of their own desires. Right? They're doing things to avoid something. And we know what this looks like in children, Children will tell you whatever they think it is you're looking to hear. And we expect that from kids because they're kids. But a 30-year-old woman, a 30-year-old man, there is no reason for them to be functioning and operating like that. Okay, so not fighting for fear of, again, divorce or disappointment, whatever your reason is, that is something we got to let go of and work through. What I've also heard, and this is popular for a lot of reasons. Well, I don't disagree or fight because I don't want to hurt your feelings. Don't want to hurt your feelings. That's interesting, right? Because people say, well, that's also the reason I lied to you, right? I don't want to hurt your feelings. Not good. Not good, guys. Also, usually what's tied to that is I don't want to be disrespectful. I didn't want to disrespect my husband or disrespect my wife. Well, first of all, you can be in a disagreement with someone and not be disrespectful. To think that you're gonna be disrespectful if you disagree is just it's a lazy excuse. It really doesn't hold any water, because being disrespectful is a choice, right? It's a choice. You choose to be disrespectful, and many times when we're being disrespectful, we know it. We know it. We're not babies. We're throwing these darts. But back to the point of not wanting to hurt your spouse's feelings or your partner's feelings, guys, listen, newsflash, right? Hurt feelings, having your feelings hurt, that's part of marriage. Yeah, and disagree with me all you want, but that is part of just relationships. Mainly because hurt feelings are just part of life. You're going to have your feelings stepped on. You're going to have people say things or do things that hurt you. Okay. And many times, it's not about what the person said to you or did to you. It's about you and your response to what was said or done to you. Let that sink in for a moment, right? I should not be walking on eggshells because I don't want to hurt your feelings. If I don't like chicken, all right, we're going to pick on chicken today, chicken every night, 5 nights a week. I should be able to tell you that without you getting upset. But in the off chance, if you do get upset about me not liking chicken 5-6 nights a week, that is not a us problem. Initially, that's not a us problem. We can make it a us problem, but understand it's not a us problem. That is a you problem. Maybe you feel offended, like I'm criticizing your chicken. But still, that is a you problem. We don't have to fight about that. I shouldn't have to stay quiet and eat chicken 6 nights a week just so I don't hurt your feelings. That's unfair. That's not right. Again, if that is the case, what are we doing? What are we doing? We've mentioned it before on the podcast. Ideally, you want to create a space for your relationship that encourages honest and open dialogue, free dialogue, a sense that it's okay to speak out about what I like, what I don't like, when I'm hurting, when I'm not hurting, when I'm upset. We all should be able to do that. And there should also be this understanding that we can fight. We can go at it. We can disagree. We can yell and scream, even drop some F-bombs if we need to, right? And again, not necessarily pointed at each other, okay? Sometimes F-bombs and damns and shits, all of that is merely for emphasis. You hear me? It's, sometimes shucks, sugar plum, gosh darn it, those things just don't do it, right? And we need to say some good 4-letter words. We should be able to speak freely and openly. This avoiding the disagreements, avoiding the fights, which eventually turns to running away from them, right? And if you're running from the fights, avoiding the fights, then you're also running and avoiding your partner. You're avoiding and running away from your spouse. Hello. And the longer we avoid them, the easier it is to avoid them. You soon find yourselves being able to go to bed. Good night. Good night. And it's now routine. And when the time comes, right, there's going to come a time when it comes where you now have to decide, okay, are we going to continue like this, or are we going to turn this around and try and do something about it? It is going to be so damn hard to turn around and now begin to talk about these things, to begin to like have a meaningful and connected relationship, because y'all have just drifted so far from each other. By the time you turn around for each other, you guys are like miles apart. So it's going to be awkward. What do we talk about? Well, figure it out. It's going to feel new. It's going to feel like, I don't want to do this. Well, if you want any chance at being together, you're going to have to. There's just no way around it. So save yourself some heartache. Save yourselves some stress, right? Don't drift too far apart. Don't drift apart from each other because you don't want to argue. You don't want to fight. There's a way to do it where it's healthy. There's a way to do it where we're not cutting each other down. Don't run from that. So if you find yourself in this situation and you want to reconnect and you're like, yo, Jameson, it's been like years. We just kind of work together to keep a roof on the house and the bills paid. And, we don't talk, but hey, we make it work. If that's where you are and you're trying to get back to a closer, more meaningful relationship, I would highly suggest you check in with a counselor or a professional of some sort, a third party, right? Maybe another couple that you trust. And if you ask these couples who've been together 30, 40, 50 years, they will tell you they fight. They will tell you that. Or they fought in the past, right? But you won't hear they said they've never fought or had any disagreements, because that is where the bond is. That's the glue that keeps them together, being able to work out their differences. Talk to those people. They can encourage you. They can guide you and give you some tips and give you some pointers. They can shine a light on some things that you are not seeing. Okay? If you want to turn around, if you're in a situation where you want to turn it around, because otherwise there's really only one outcome. The marriage, the relationship, it's gonna die. It's gonna die. Because there's nothing worse than being in a marriage with someone or in a relationship with someone who you're not engaged with, you're not communicating with. You start asking yourself questions like, well, what am I doing here? Why am I with you? It's one thing we don't fight, but we don't even talk, which is what happens, right? If you don't argue about things, you're not going to talk about anything, because there's going to be some disagreements. Even in the things you enjoy, even the things you agree on, there's going to be disagreements. So save yourself, save your marriage, avoid the heartache. Okay, have the confrontations, but be fair. And in future episodes, we're going to address the conflict, because it's huge. It's huge. We're going to talk about how to fight fair. We're going to talk about some things you want to say, some things you do not want to say, as well as some things you don't need to respond to. You do not, I repeat, you do not have to respond to everything that's said to you. And I'm not just saying men or women, everybody. Your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whomever, your mama, your daddy, they'll say stuff. You don't have to respond to it all. So thank you guys for listening. I hope this has been helpful. One way I can know for sure is by you letting me know, right? Leave some comments, leave some reviews. Let me know how this is helping you, or how it's not. Maybe you're just entertained. Maybe you're doing this for a friend, right? It doesn't matter. It's all good. Thank you to those of you who leave reviews and comments and check us out on our social media feeds. Dr. Jameson Mercier on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all of that, as well as Herdine, the wife mentor. Also, those who've been visiting the website and sending emails, thank you so much. That is mercierwellness.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode of The Couples Council. Bye for now.
Hey everybody! Thank you for listening to our mom and dad.
If you like them as much as we do, then click subscribe and leave a comment. But now they have to go because it's family time.
So go practice what you heard, and we'll catch you on the next episode.